Welcome to Empowering Impact, Volunteer Management Essentials for Country Programs, part of our new team member training for Best Buddies International. At its core, Best Buddies is a global volunteer movement. Our organization is made up of volunteers, and we wouldn't be able to carry out our mission without them. They are the heartbeat of our work. They expand our reach, bring fresh energy, and ensure our mission lives in communities everywhere. Strong volunteer management doesn't require a large staff or a big budget, but what it does require is intention. How we welcome, guide, and support people who choose to give their time, their talent, and their treasure to Best Buddies. By the end of this session, you'll walk away with a roadmap, practical tools, and strategies you can tailor to your country program, no matter its size, culture, or resources. So let's get started. First, let's level set on what we're going to cover today. We'll start by looking at why volunteer management really matters, how it multiplies impact, builds trust, and sustains programs over time. From there, we'll talk about the many roles volunteers can play so you can see the range of ways people contribute and how to match them to the right tasks. Next, we'll walk through the foundations of a strong volunteer management program through the 5 pit stops along the volunteer roadmap: recruitment, onboarding, engagement, retention, and recognition. After double-clicking into each of those areas, we'll close with common pitfalls and real-world scenarios, so you can feel prepared to both celebrate contributions and respond to challenges in a way that strengthens your volunteer program. Think of this as a journey. We'll start with the big picture and move into practical tools before ending with strategies to sustain your volunteer program for the long term. Why spend so much time on this topic? Volunteer management isn't just a side task or something you employ only when an event comes around. It really should be a cornerstone of your strategy and a focus of your own professional development as a Best Buddies team member. Your focus on volunteer management directly shapes how far our programs can reach in your country, how trusted we are in the community, and how sustainable we can be over time. There are 4 big reasons volunteer management is essential. First, volunteers are mission multipliers. They expand our network, extend our reach, and boost overall engagement. Picture this: an event volunteer helping at a friendship walk has such a positive experience that they decide to connect us with their company's head of HR. Suddenly, we're introduced to an entirely new audience of employees and potential partners. That's the power of volunteers multiplying our mission. Second, volunteers are trust builders. For many parents, partners, donors, their first impression of Best Buddies comes through a volunteer. And often it's the personal story a volunteer shares, why this mission matters to them, that builds credibility and lasting trust in a way no presentation ever could. Third, volunteers sustain engagement. A strong volunteer culture provides continuity even when staff or funding changes. And the more volunteers we engage, the more diverse and resilient our supporter base becomes. That diversity of voices and connections makes programs stronger and less dependent on any one person or resource. And finally, volunteers strengthen our community. Serving as a volunteer gives both them and us a chance to test the waters. Based on their experience, many choose to deepen their involvement, becoming donors, joining committees, committing to advisory boards, or referring us to others. While the way they engage may shift over time, if we manage them well, they will stay involved and support our programs for many years to come. Now, let's look at the building blocks of a strong volunteer management program, the roadmap to guide you. Building a volunteer management program can sometimes feel daunting. There are a lot of moving parts. And on the other side, becoming a new volunteer can feel overwhelming. Where do I fit? What's expected of me? How do I get started? That's why this roadmap is so important. It breaks down the process into 5 clear stages: recruitment, finding the right people by sharing our mission and reaching into trusted networks; onboarding, setting volunteers up for success with a warm welcome, clear expectations, and an orientation; engagement, keeping people active and connected through communication and meaningful opportunities; retention, sustaining involvement by listening, offering growth, and making sure volunteers feel valued; and recognition, celebrating contributions in authentic ways that build loyalty and motivation. These stages may look like in a straight line, but in practice, they overlap. And depending on where your program is right now, you may focus more on one area than another. As we move forward, we'll unpack each stage with practical tools and examples you can adapt in your own context. Recruitment is where it all begins, bringing the right people into the mission. Sometimes this happens at bigger moments, a university fair, a disability-related conference, through a corporate partnership, or at a local family or school event. These are all great opportunities to share our work and should be prioritized in your recruitment strategy. But recruitment doesn't always have to be big and formal. It also happens in the day-to-day moments. Be ready to share your best buddy story anytime. Sometimes it's not even about making an ask, it's about sharing your excitement for this great organization you're a part of. You might meet your strongest volunteer while running errands when someone notices the Best Buddy sticker on your water bottle, or a coworker asks about your Best Buddies t-shirt or pin. You may have heard the famous story of our founder, Anthony Kennedy Shriver, recruiting a powerful volunteer while stopped at a red light on his bike. Remember, these small conversations can spark big commitments. Now, on this slide, you'll see some common recruitment strategies. Local outreach, partnering with schools, universities, community groups. Digital outreach can be very effective using WhatsApp, social media, other volunteer platforms that are common in your country. Inclusive practices, making sure you're actively welcoming people with disabilities and people from diverse backgrounds. Motivation, having that simple conversation with potential volunteers. What drew them to Best Buddies? What kind of role would they enjoy most? Current volunteers, leveraging your existing volunteers to bring their friends or coworkers. Peer-to-peer recruitment can be so powerful. Of course, those recruitment events, keeping them simple, sharing inspiring stories and making the sign-up process easy. And tracking. This is so important. It doesn't have to be fancy, but with all your different recruitment strategies, make sure that some form of tracking is happening. Use whatever format works for you. We recommend a shared Excel sheet with all the key data points noted so that it can be shared and updated over time. But what matters is consistency in your tracking. The real takeaway here is that no one size fits all. Successful recruitment usually comes from a mix of strategies. Some big, like events or corporate partnerships, and some small, like everyday conversations. The key is to try different methods. Notice what sticks in your community and lean into the approaches that bring in the most committed volunteers. And remember, this isn't static. As your volunteer program grows and matures, the strategies that work best may shift. What works in the early days to bring people in might look different once you have a larger base or when you want to engage more specialized skills. Recruitment is an ongoing process of learning and adjusting. Once someone says yes, onboarding is where you set the tone. This is the moment when volunteers decide, do I feel cared for here? Do they value my time? Did I make the right choice in committing to volunteer? On this slide, you'll see a checklist of simple but important steps you can adapt to your context. A warm welcome, a personal introduction to the team, or a short note of appreciation. An orientation session. Provide them with a clear overview of Best Buddies, awareness around intellectual and developmental disabilities, and how your program works locally. Practical tools. Make it easy for them. A WhatsApp group, an event calendar, or a quick how to volunteer here guide. First connection. Pair new volunteers with buddies or existing volunteers so they know who to turn to ask questions and feel that sense of community. Hands-on experience. Give them a chance to shadow or co-lead something early on. People feel like they belong when they can contribute right away. Celebrate their start. A group photo, a certificate, a public thank you at a meeting shows you appreciate them. Optional agreement. In some contexts, a short written agreement can help set expectations and boundaries. The goal of these steps is simple. Make sure new volunteers feel cared for, that their time is respected, and that they have what they need to get started confidently. The better they feel on day one, the more likely they are to stay involved long term. After onboarding, the focus shifts to engagement, how you keep people active, motivated, and connected over time. This slide highlights 3 pillars to guide your approach: connection and belonging. Engagement begins with community. Create simple traditions that help volunteers feel part of the group, like starting meetings with a story of impact, giving new volunteers a small welcome item, or taking a group photo at the end of events to post afterwards. These little touches build identity and belonging. Support and retention. Engagement also means showing you see volunteers as individuals, not just extra hands. A quick check in during an event or a one on one conversation to ask, how's this going for you? What's working? Shows that you value their experience. These small moments build trust and prevent burnout. Flexibility and growth. Not every volunteer can give the same amount of time, and that's okay. Offer smaller, task based roles like translation, digital outreach, data entry, or helping with logistics for those with limited capacity, while also creating leadership opportunities for those ready for more responsibility. Meeting people where they are keeps them motivated. But here's the bigger picture: the more volunteers you engage, the more diverse and resilient your supporter base becomes. Different volunteers bring different skills, networks, and perspectives. That diversity spreads ownership across many people, making your program stronger and less dependent on any one person. Engagement is about people, not just tasks. When you build connections, provide support, and stay flexible, volunteers are going to stay inspired and your programs will grow stronger. But what I'd like to do here is pause for a quick reflection. If 10 committed volunteers showed up tomorrow, what's the first thing you'd ask them to do? Of course, we always want to listen to volunteers and pay attention to what they're interested in. But as staff, we also need to be clear about what our programs need in order to grow. And volunteers actually often appreciate when we can say, here's what we need. This is the area that we need the most help in. At Best Buddies, we never want to turn someone away either. If the fit isn't obvious from the start, it just means we need to get creative, maybe reshaping a role or finding a small task that connects their skills and their availability to our mission. So think about it. If you had those 10 new volunteers tomorrow, what tasks, big or small, could you immediately place them in so that they feel useful and connected from the start, and so that you know you're getting that much closer to meeting your program goals? Feel free to pause the video and jot down a few ideas. Now that we've reflected on where volunteers could step in, let's look at the many different roles they can play. This slide highlights some of the most common ones. Event volunteers. These are often the first people others meet at friendship walks, champion of the year events, community socials, school events, citizen events, perhaps a conference you're tabling at. They help with setup, registration, logistics, and supporting our participants. Their energy and friendliness really set the tone. Speech coaches. These volunteers work directly with ambassadors to prepare for presentations, helping with writing, practicing delivery, and building confidence. Skill development volunteers. These folks support our jobs participants, our transitions participants, and our ambassadors, maybe through mock interviews or workplace readiness training. Now, it's important to note if you're part of a country program that has the Best Buddies Jobs program, we don't want to use volunteers as job coaches. However, skills-based volunteers can add real value for training and workshops. Guest speakers, people who bring their expertise to a session, especially around transitions or leadership development. Administrative volunteers, sometimes the most overlooked but absolutely essential. They help with data entry, developing email campaigns, donor stewardship, taking photos, maybe building a social media timeline or preparing materials for an upcoming event, freeing up staff to focus on bigger priorities. A great example of this is having volunteers make direct one-on-one calls to everyone that donated or attended a recent event. That's something very hard to prioritize amidst your staff, but could be a great task for a volunteer. And lastly, committees and boards, professionals, alumni, or parents who take on leadership and core fundraising roles. These volunteers often become some of our strongest advocates and connectors. Each of these roles strengthens a different part of the program. And when we're clear about these options, it's much easier to plug people into meaningful opportunities along the way. Here are a few other roles to highlight. Double-clicking on digital and social media volunteers. These are often students or marketing professionals who can help with content creation, campaigns, or even managing social media posts for your country program. They bring creativity and know how to connect with audiences online in ways that can really amplify our mission. Corporate volunteers. Many companies want to engage their employees in meaningful ways. Through corporate citizens or transitions programs or the ambassador program, volunteers may come in or participate for one-day events or offer professional expertise through trainings and workshops. The key is shaping opportunities in partnership with HR or corporate social responsibility team leads so that it works for both the company and your program. Program participants themselves. At Best Buddies, our participants are also considered volunteers. Associate members, for example, those members who are involved in a friendship program but aren't yet matched one-to-one, they often step in and can help with the events, supporting those campaigns, representing the mission in their schools and their communities. Their involvement strengthens the program and shows inclusion in action. The point is this: volunteering isn't limited to a single type of activity. It can be digital, corporate, participant driven. When we connect these different roles together, we create a much more dynamic, sustainable volunteer base for our country programs. Now that we've walked through the many roles volunteers can play, let's turn to the question of how we keep them involved for the long term. On this slide, you'll see a pyramid that breaks retention and recognition into three levels. At the base, we have clear expectations and feedback. Volunteers need to know what's expected of them and how they're doing. This foundation creates confidence and reduces frustration. In the middle, you can see consistent support and connection. This is about staying in touch, quick check ins, listening to their experiences, and making sure they feel part of the team. When volunteers feel supported, they are far more likely to stick with the program. At the top, we see recognition and leadership opportunities. This is where we celebrate contributions and invite experienced volunteers into bigger roles, whether that's mentoring new volunteers, leading a committee, or representing Best Buddies in the community as a board member. It's worth noting that recognition doesn't always need a budget. Sometimes it's as simple as a heartfelt thank you, a public shout out on LinkedIn or at the start of a meeting, or a spotlight on your country program's social media. What matters is that it feels genuine. So when you think about retention, imagine this pyramid. A strong base of expectations and support makes recognition and growth at the top feel authentic. And together, the three layers create long-term commitment. As we strengthen volunteer programs, we also need to think about the guardrails that keep everyone safe. On this slide, you'll see three areas to pay close attention to. Safeguarding. This means having clear boundaries and guidance, especially when working with youth or vulnerable adults. Make sure volunteers understand appropriate interactions, confidentiality, and who to contact if a concern arises. Data protection. Only collect the information you truly need and store it securely, whether that's on paper or digitally. Follow your country's privacy rules and be thoughtful about how volunteer and participant data is used. Liability and risk. Every program should have clear protocols for safety at events. This could include making sure volunteers sign waivers, knowing what to do in case of an incident, and ensuring you have the right insurance in place. These considerations might not feel as exciting as recruitment or recognition, but they're essential. When we get this right, we protect our participants, our volunteers, and the reputation of our programs. Every volunteer program will face challenges, and this slide highlights some of the most common pitfalls, along with a few quick wins to keep things on track. Let's first look at the pitfalls. The first is unclear roles. If a volunteer isn't sure what they're supposed to do, frustration will start to set in. Another is lack of follow-up. When someone expresses interest and doesn't hear back, the energy is lost. Over-reliance on one person is another risk. If everything falls to one volunteer, burnout is going to be inevitable. And finally, waiting too long to check in. Without proactive conversations, you may miss early signs of disengagement or challenges. Now let's look at some of those quick wins to help prevent some of these pitfalls. Send a welcome message from leadership or staff as soon as someone joins. That immediate acknowledgement sets the tone. Use a monthly volunteer spotlight to celebrate contributions and keep energy high. Create a WhatsApp or messaging group for quick updates and reminders. It helps people feel connected. And remember, sometimes the simplest thank you note or recognition in a meeting can go further than a big gesture. The point is this: when we anticipate the pitfalls and use these quick wins, we strengthen relationships and keep volunteers engaged for the long term. Even with the best planning, tricky situations come up. This slide shares a few common scenarios and some ways to respond. Scenario 1, a volunteer isn't showing up. Start with curiosity, not frustration. Reach out and ask if something has changed or if there's a barrier that you can help with. Sometimes it's a scheduling issue, sometimes they feel disconnected. Either way, your check in shows you care and opens the door to re engagement. Scenario two, a volunteer is overstepping. This can be a bit uncomfortable, but boundaries are important. Acknowledge their enthusiasm, then redirect. We really value your commitment. Here's the best way you can support us. Clarity keeps the program safe and respectful for everyone. Scenario three, a volunteer is burned out. Burnout happens when someone's doing too much or feels underappreciated. Thank them sincerely and explore lighter or different opportunities that might rekindle their excitement. Sometimes giving someone space is what allows them to return with fresh energy. There's a few other scenarios here for you to read through, but the key across all these scenarios is communication, checking in early, listening openly, and offering clear guidance can turn a potential problem into a chance to strengthen the relationship. We've talked about pitfalls and scenarios now, but it's important to recognize that these will look different in every country and context and will likely change over time. So, here's a few questions to reflect on. What challenges are most common in your program or community? How might you proactively prepare for those situations before they grow into bigger problems? Think about scenarios you've already faced. That could be at Best Buddies or with other organizations. What worked well, and what ways could you approach differently next time? Remember, every challenge is a learning moment. So instead of seeing pitfalls as setbacks, treat them as opportunities to reflect, adapt, and refine your approach. Over time, this is what helps you strengthen your volunteer management process and build a system that fits your local reality. Now, let's summarize a few key points. First, strong foundations matter. When roles, processes, and safeguards are clear, everything else becomes easier to build and sustain. Recruitment should be intentional. The more we meet volunteers where they're at and clearly communicate the value of their participation, the stronger our volunteer pipeline becomes. Third, onboarding really does shape the experience. A warm welcome, a practical training, they set the tone for long-term engagement. Fourth, engagement is what drives retention. Having those regular check-ins, creating a sense of belonging, and helping people truly feel part of a community keeps volunteers connected and motivated. And finally, proactive management prevents bigger challenges later. Leading with transparency, addressing issues early, and creating space for growth or transition helps protect both the program and the volunteer experience. To close, I want to point out a couple of resources that are available to help you get started. These resources are all located in the Global Resource Hub, and you can adapt them to fit your own country program. The Sphere of Influence worksheet is designed to help you map out who you already know: individuals, organizations, companies, community groups, everyone who could support or connect you to potential volunteers. This is a great exercise to complete on your own, and it can be really valuable to do as a group during a staff meeting or board meeting to help identify new connections and opportunities. The sample volunteer commitment form is a starting point for setting clear expectations with volunteers, including time commitment, roles, and responsibilities. The sample volunteer opportunity decks give you great examples of how you can present volunteer opportunities to companies or community groups in a clear and professional way. And the volunteer recruitment tracker helps you stay organized by tracking your outreach, interest levels, your follow-ups, and who is actively engaged in your volunteer pipeline. These resources are all meant to be foundational, but remember that each program's unique. You'll likely create your own resources as you build and grow your program. We encourage you to share those resources with BBI so that we can highlight best practices. What you build locally will help to inspire and strengthen our programs around the globe. And if you're looking for a specific resource and don't see it here or in the hub, or you need a tailored version to your program, connect with your country relationship manager. That's a great place to start. They can help you locate resources, adapt templates, or connect you with additional support from BBI. As we close, I want to thank you for taking the time to focus on this critical part of our mission. Volunteers are the heart of Best Buddies. They multiply our impact, they build trust, and they help sustain our programs. Strong volunteer management isn't just about filling roles, it's really about building those relationships, creating belonging, and inviting people into a global movement for inclusion. So here's one simple action to take. If you already have volunteers in your country program, make a point to check in with one of them over the next week. Ask how they're doing. Why do they volunteer with Best Buddies? And listen in. And if you don't yet have volunteers in your country program, make a point to reach out to one person in your network. This can be casual over coffee or a phone call, just to share about Best Buddies and learn a bit more about them and where they might be interested in supporting the mission. That small step is how programs grow, one relationship at a time. And remember, every country program is learning and creating resources along the way. So we'd love to see and share what you create so we can promote best practices across our global network. Thank you for everything you do to lead and grow Best Buddies around the world. Together, we're building a stronger and more inclusive future, one volunteer at a time.